far, we've looked at consonants and vowels and the symbols on the IPA chart that represent the particular sounds of Australian English. Now, we're going to look at some other factors that affect speech sounds in particular ways and how these secondary features are represented by marks that we add to the IPA symbols. So firstly, we'll look at nasalization. Remember that the velum, the soft palate, can be up or down. It is up against the back wall of the throat when making stops like b, and down when making nasals like m. When it is up, air is prevented from going out the nasal passages and nose, and when it is down, air can escape through the nasal passages. During the making of the vowels that we discussed in the last tutorial, the velum is up, meaning that air can't get out through the nose, though it can escape through the mouth, since vowels don't involve any obstruction of the airflow. It is possible to lower the velum when making a vowel, meaning that air could get out both through the nose and through the mouth. A vowel that's made when the velum is lowered is referred to as a nasalized vowel. When we want to say something extra about a sound, something that doesn't usually apply to it, we often add a little mark above or below the symbol. A mark like this is called a diacritic. The way we mark nasalization is by adding a diacritic, in this case a wavy line called a tilde, over the symbol of the vowel involved. For example, this symbol here is a nasalized, tense, high back-rounded vowel. Nasalization is predictable in English. A vowel that occurs before a nasal consonant in the same syllable is nasalized. Other vowels are not nasalized. So we say that nasalization is predictable in English because it always and only occurs before nasal consonants, so we can accurately predict when it will occur. For example, beat is not nasalized, and bean, this bottom word here, is nasalized. So if you say these two words and listen to the difference in how you say the vowel, in the second one, the velum is lowered and air is escaping through the mouth and the nose. In many other languages, nasalization is distinctive. It isn't predictable. For example, in French, this top word here is beau, but the second word is bon. The only difference is the nasalization of the vowel sound. Because nasalization is predictable in English, we often don't mark it in broad transcriptions. Some types of sound are usually voiced, including nasals, laterals, and vowels. But in some languages, these sounds can also be voiceless. Japanese has voiceless vowels. To mark such a sound as voiceless, we place a diacritic in the form of a little circle under its symbol. So this is the symbol for a voiceless, tense, high back-rounded vowel. Some other languages have voiceless nasals, laterals, or rhotics. Burmese has voiceless nasals. We use the voiceless diacritic under the symbol for the particular sound. So for example, in this slide here, the N in the middle with a circle under it represents a voiceless alveolar nasal. So this sequence here would be pronounced ah-ha. Another issue to do with voicing can apply to some consonants, specifically to stop consonants. What we find in some situations is that when a stop comes immediately before a sound that would normally be voiced, the voicing, the vocal cord vibration, doesn't start immediately but is delayed. So during this delay, a puff of air comes out of the mouth. This delay in voicing is called aspiration. The symbol for aspiration is a small raised H after the symbol for the stop involved. For example, in the word tap, we start with a T, which is voiceless, but then there's a vowel, and vowels are usually voiced. But in this word, the voicing doesn't start until a little time after the vowel begins. Say the word, and you'll hear the puff of air after the T sound. Tap. We say that the word tap begins with an aspirated stop, specifically an aspirated voiceless alveolar stop. And we would write it as here with a T and a little H above it. In English, the only sounds that are aspirated are P, T and K. and they're only aspirated in one situation, when they're the first segment in a stressed syllable. We'll be talking about segments and stress in a moment. For example, the k in kind is aspirated, so we would write the symbol for it as k with a little h after it. But the k in skin is not, because it's not the first sound of the syllable. And the p of stop is not aspirated either. Because aspiration is predictable in English, we often don't mark it when we're doing a broad transcription. The properties that we've been talking about so far, like the places and manners of articulation, voicing and aspiration in consonants, or frontness and roundedness in vowels, are all features of individual sounds. You can say that a particular sound is bilabial or voiced or rounded. You would not usually say that a syllable was rounded. However, there are some features that aren't properties of individual sounds, but properties of whole syllables or words, or even of phrases and sentences. These kinds of features are known as suprasegmental features. We're going to talk more about syllables later, but you know basically what a syllable is. For example, the word marker has 2 syllables, but the word post has 1. One of the suprasegmental features is stress. If you say any English word of 2 or more syllables to yourself, then you'll notice that one of the syllables stands out more than the others. For example, in these words, the syllable that stands out more than the others is marked with a thing like an apostrophe. So we have unintentional, abolitionist, composition. The syllable after the mark is the one that stands out. This is the stressed syllable. A stressed syllable is one on which more energy is expended. This often means that it's louder, sometimes it differs in pitch, and sometimes it's longer. Stress is an important feature of English because sometimes different words differ only in which syllable is stressed. For example, compare the noun permit, an official document of authorization, with the verb permit, to give authorization or consent to someone. In English, which syllable is stressed is not easily predictable, but in some other languages it is usually predictable and regular. For example, in Turkish, stress is usually predictable, and there's a simple rule for it. The last syllable of the word is usually the syllable with stress. In Standard Fijian, it is also predictable. The second last syllable is usually stressed, unless the last syllable has a diphthong or a long vowel, in which case that syllable is stressed. In the IPA, stress is marked, as you've probably guessed, by a short raised vertical line, as in these words here: insurance, final, sentimental, consent. Now here we've used English spelling, but generally we would be using this marker in a transcription with the IPA symbols. It is possible to mark a couple of different levels of stress, but we'll only worry about primary stress, so marking the syllable of a word that the most energy is expended on. If you listen carefully, you'll notice that the pitch of the voice is constantly going up and down in English sentences, and that sentences have a sort of melody. In English and in all other languages, the pitch pattern of phrases and sentences is used to give certain kinds of information. For example, you can make a statement into a question simply by changing its pitch pattern. So compare "he's here" to "he's here," or "you're going today" to "you're going today." Such pitch patterns and changes are referred to as intonation. In many languages, like Chinese and Thai, pitch is also used another way. Words can have the same segments but differ in their pitches. Not absolute pitch, as with music, but their pitch relative to one another. And this use of pitch is called tone. Tonal languages are extremely common in Africa and East Asia. Tones are used in different ways in different languages. Sometimes the contour or the shape of the tone is important. Sometimes the tone is the same for an entire word or is different for each syllable. A language that is considered to be a tonal language is one that uses tone to convey meaning. For example, Mandarin Chinese has 5 distinct tones, so the same segment can have 5 different meanings depending on the tone used. So, ma means mum, ma means hemp, ma means horse, ma means scold, and ma is a question marker. We've been talking in terms of segments, and we've discussed features which segments are composed of, but of course there are larger units of speech like words, phrases, and syllables. It has proven quite difficult to come up with a universally agreed upon definition of the syllable, but we all have some intuitive notion of the syllable, and we usually agree about how many syllables a word has, although it's sometimes more difficult to decide on the boundaries between syllables in a word. Many languages have a writing system that's based on the segments in the language, like the English alphabet. But some languages have syllabic writing systems, in which symbols generally stand not for segments, but for whole syllables. Inuktitut, spoken in northern Canada, has a syllabic writing system, and the writing system of ancient Babylonian was also largely syllabic. We use the Greek letter sigma to stand for a syllable. Syllables have internal structure. So the core of a syllable is called the nucleus. Every syllable must have a nucleus, and it's usually a vowel. Anything in the syllable after the nucleus is the coda. There will only be consonants in it. The nucleus and the coda together make up the rhyme. Anything in the syllable before the nucleus is the onset. Only consonants will be found in the onset. And a syllable can also consist only of the nucleus. It doesn't have to have an onset or a coda. For example, the English word plant consists of a single syllable. In this diagram, the syllable has been broken up into its onset, any consonants preceding the vowel, and its rhyme, all the sounds from the vowel to the end of the syllable. The rhyme has been further divided into the nucleus, which in the vast majority of syllables is a vowel, and the coda, which are any consonants following the nucleus. Languages differ in which sounds they have, but they also differ in where in syllables sounds can occur and what combinations can occur in different places in the syllables. The rules that govern this are called Phonotactic Rules, and every language has them. Languages differ a lot in their phonotactic rules. English is more free than some languages, though not as free as others. English allows syllables to begin with 2 consonants, so to have 2 consonants in the onset, which not all languages permit. There are some languages, like Hawaiian, in which you can only ever have 1 consonant in the onset. Phonotactic rules not only say how many segments you can have in a particular place in the syllable, they also say which segments you can have there. So although English allows sequences of 2 consonants in the onset, it doesn't just permit any combination of consonants there. In fact, it's quite restrictive. For example, the sequences k-n and p-n are not allowed to occur syllable initially. Remember, we're not talking about spelling, but the sequences of phonetic sounds. English also allows 3 consonants in onsets, but again, not just any combination of 3 consonants. In fact, the first one will always have to be s. The second one must be a voiceless stop, and the third one must be a liquid or glide. For example, strike or splayed. This is a phonotactic rule of English. English doesn't allow onsets with more than 3 consonants, but there are languages that do. There are also restrictions about what can appear in the codas of syllables. For example, in English, a syllable can end in the sequence pt, as in apt, but they cannot end in the sequence t. Also, there are interesting rules about where certain sounds can occur. So the velar nasal, is not a rare sound in English. We find it in words like sing and ring, but it is never at the beginning of a syllable in English. In other languages, such as arto in PNG, it's quite common to have at the onset of syllables, such as in most of the syllables in the sentence for you go and sleep, which is ngingi, ngalai, ngai. Because these rules exist, we can talk about possible words of English or another language, words that don't exist but could, as they don't violate the phonotactic rules of the language. For example, there's no such word as blit in English, but there could be maybe the name of a new product, while the word bnit is not a possible word of English because it breaks the rules. There are some universal phonotactic rules as well. There are sequences of sounds in particular places in syllables that no language allows. One example of this is the sequence ulp, which is rarely or never found in syllable onsets.